There we go. Hello, thank you so much for coming to our session this Friday night. We are happy to be here with you and sharing information regarding college counseling during the time of COVID-19. Your presenters are listed here. My name is Claire Nold-Glaser, and I'm currently the past president of AkSCA. Also presenting with me this evening is Jen Reeves-Eisbach, who is the president-elect of the Pacific Northwest Association for College Admission Counseling, and Patrick Wilson, who's the current president of AkSCA. And I hope you have a moment to take note of our favorite Alaska memories. We all wish that we were there in person with you, but we all have very good memories of experiences and times that we've spent in the 49th state. Thank you so much for having us this evening. So the purpose of this session is to just talk about how our work has shifted, what's changed. We're going to share a variety of resources with you. But to start off, I'd like to hear from Jen and Patrick. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how the pandemic has affected your work with students, specifically in the area of guiding students in their college admissions and application process. Jen, could you share some perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that as a public high school counselor, I have about 300 students on my caseload, and it's been really difficult. I think any school counselor would say that right now. Connecting with students in a virtual format is a lot more time consuming, trying to track them down as opposed to running to a classroom or catching them in the hallway. And so I think the manpower has to be, or woman power, has to be much more intentional and thoughtful as far as reaching out to students, making sure that they have the resources they need. It's definitely helped us with beefing up our websites to make sure that the information is accessible, that we can refer to it when students and families are reaching out to us to ask about college planning and questions related to that. I think it's also been hard to get students to think about it. This particular senior class has been, from myself here in Portland, Oregon, has been all online. So they haven't had any time in a school building. And so they haven't been able to visit college campuses necessarily. Their whole search has been online through virtual events and activities. The opportunity to find those hidden gems has been decreased. Those are things that I would usually happen at a college fair when you're walking down the aisles or stopping to talk to colleges that you have to wait for, you know. So I think it's just been a lot more difficult. And so I feel like as a school counselor, I've had to really adjust how I'm doing my job on a day-to-day basis to make sure that students are getting what they need and can access it when it's convenient to them, not necessarily when it's convenient to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. People's schedules are different, that's for sure. Patrick, how about you as a college admissions professional? How have your interactions shifted, or your work?
In some cases, very much like Jen discussed, you know, and I think the scheduling piece is a really important part of that. You know, for us, really trying to find new and creative ways to reach students, share the information that we have. And I think also something that we've been trying to do within our office and with our structure is remembering that going to college and applying to colleges and even searching for colleges may not be the top of mind thing. It may not be the most important thing, you know, and I think about the conversations, you know, are we surviving or are we thriving? And so much of it is really focused on surviving. And the prospect of going to college in the next year. You know, we try to instill that optimism. This is something to look forward to and be excited about, but also realistic, and that if you're helping support your family, or you're needing to watch younger siblings or something like that, you've got technological issues anyways, that you're not going to log on to a virtual presentation during your you know, virtual school lunch time period. You're probably going to want to step away from your computer, just like we all do. And so thinking about when we're scheduling those sorts of things, thinking about the time zones. Yeah, we're in the Pacific time zone. Alaska's an hour behind. We have a large population from Hawaii. You know, that means we're going to have to wait 2 or 3 hours, depending on the time zone changes, of when we can actually reach students. And it may be the most convenient thing for me to do call outreach at 10 in the morning, but students hopefully shouldn't be answering their phones at that time, because hopefully they're in Zoom school, or hopefully they're in regular school, just like, you know, we would expect them to be pre-pandemic times. And so continuing to think about when and how can we best reach students, and what can they respond to best. So just trying to really build up as much opportunity for them to connect with us, and know that we're here and ready to meet with them when they're ready to get to us. And I think really, again, just trying to keep a student-centered approach to what the admission process looks like. At the end of the day, this isn't about me, the admission counselor. It really should be about the student, and just trying to remember that, the student and their family and their mentors.
Yeah, boy, that's a really good point, Patrick, of being student-centered. I know sometimes, you know, as someone who's worked in the field for a number of years, sometimes I feel like I'm repeating myself when I'm talking to students. And I have to remind myself that that particular student or that particular family, it's the first time, you know, that they've been in the college process. And that helps me kind of, you know, stay grounded. So do either of you want to talk about any changes that you've noticed from last spring? I mean, the seniors, you know, we went home in March, and the seniors are fairly well done with their applications, and we're looking at juniors now as well. But I'm wondering if you've noticed any particular changes in your work with students from last spring to the present time.
I feel like this senior class has been much more on their own when it comes to a lot of the initial stages of college planning and research, because they have been, in my case, online their entire year. So, and through the end of last year, last March, we had to cancel our junior planning events. We worked with local community-based organizations to pull together videos, but it's not the same as an in-person event where you're learning about financial aid and for your colleges, to your colleges, you know, the military or apprenticeship. So that piece was really missing for this senior class. And so trying to figure out what path they want to go on has taken a little bit more time. I'm noticing students are more delayed in their college choices. I'm still getting letters of recommendation for college applications, which is not typical for this time of year. So students are trying to balance life and things that are going on around them with thinking about their future. And so that the process is taking a backseat to everything else going on around them. As Patrick said, you know, people are working, kids are working to help supplement with income for potential parental or family income that may have been lost. So it's when it can happen, it happens. And sometimes it's, you know, second, third, or fourth down the list.
Yeah. Patrick, could you talk about what it's like having students on campus at Linfield, and what's the kind of messaging that you use with students and families to help them feel safe?
Yeah, so we fortunately were able to bring our students to campus. While last spring we sent everybody home, we went to virtual learning through the end of the academic year, had to cancel graduation, of course. But we worked really hard, and there was a lot of different plans put into place and changed and evolved and whatnot all the way up. But we ended up bringing students back to campus. The majority came to campus. They wanted to be here. We're a residential campus. 75% or more of our students live on campus. So, really trying to emphasize to the students when they came back to sort of stay in our Linfield bubble, interact, keep your pod. We were trying to be really creative. We fortunately had a pretty late fall, so we could do a lot of outdoor activities and whatnot, and really just emphasizing a lot of the same public health measures that are emphasized everywhere. You must wear a mask, limit your contacts. Our classes were a combination of in-person, hybrid, and online. So, really, again, trying to meet students as best as we could where they were. There's some things that needed to be in person, but there's a lot of courses that could at least be hybrid, and just making a lot of adjustments to that. And I think because our students ultimately wanted to be here, they were willing to go along with all of these rules, right? That this is what we've got to do in order to be at school and to be at Linfield. I think for a lot of our athletes, they were certainly disappointed in how their seasons went and some of these other sorts of things that, even music and theater. People got really creative. We did YouTube theater, and so they could still exist and do their productions and whatnot, but just in a different way. So I'm constantly impressed by what our students have done and how they've managed through that. We made some changes here for the spring semester. So in the fall, we did testing upon arrival. This year, or this spring, we asked students to get tested before and then get tested once they were here. Actually found some students who had COVID-19 and tested positive. They didn't realize it, they were asymptomatic. So that was really helpful. We've had a routine testing procedure as well. It's not the whole campus every week or something, but pulling random groups of students. The student athletes have done a tremendous amount of fundraising, actually, because all of that testing costs a lot of money. So just really trying to do what needs to be done, even though we're all back on campus to help support students. We're still taking a lot of Zoom meetings ourselves, even within the office here. We'll get on a Zoom with somebody who's upstairs or across the hall or something like that. So, which is kind of funny, but it is what it is, and so we do it. And I think overall, as we planned over the summer, people were willing and able to put in the work to say, what does it look like to be able to bring these students back to campus, to continue to provide them the education that we know they came here for, and that they want, because we also knew that in the spring there were students who were sitting outside of McDonald's to get Wi-Fi because they didn't have it in their home, and that being back on campus was going to be where they could be successful academically. They may needed to be here as a safe space, that their home life just didn't allow for productive education. And so, and here we are, we're starting the spring semester. We started this week. We're going straight through. There's no spring break, there's no days off. We'll end early. So we're expediting the semester as much as possible so we can get through these next, I guess now 14 weeks, and get students graduated and progressing through their educational experience. So it's been a real team effort, and we're all in it, and I think being successful in that way. So
nice. I think that flexibility and creativity and being willing to try new things is just been such a hallmark, I think, of this experience. I never or rarely ever met with students virtually in my work, only if it was a snow day, and now all of my student meetings, are via Zoom, and I'm a lot more comfortable with it than I was back in March, I'll tell you that. Hey, Jen, real quickly, I'm wondering if you can tell us, we know that a lot of schools have gone test optional. And I'm wondering if you could share with us your perspective on that and how you're advising your students quickly.
Yeah. So to give folks an idea of the makeup of my school, we have about 1,300 students at Roosevelt High School here in North Portland, and we are a minority majority high school. 40% of our student population alone identifies as Latinx. So when it came to ACT and SAT testing, students didn't traditionally score really well on them. And so it wasn't a huge factor in college admissions for most of our students. So we have been advising students to look at schools test optional for many years. It is helpful that so many more are now test optional. I think one of the key things in working with students around kind of the new push for test optional is the terminology. So test optional, test blind, what does that mean? Helping them understand that if they do send a score, which colleges are actually going to look at them, which are not. Some colleges require students to actually say they're applying test optional, as opposed to some who just are. So it is very weedy in trying to navigate what it means. I am glad to see so many schools going test optional. I think it really opens up options and opportunities for disadvantaged students, second language learners, students who traditionally just didn't score well on a standardized test. So as much as possible, we are encouraging students to look at test optional schools. And here in the state of Oregon, all of our public institutions this last year recently went test optional. So that has helped too.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jen. So on this slide, I put in some different resources that are available to all of us, because it does feel like, to me, like just talking about the test optional or the test free schools, it almost feels like every day there's news on that front, or there certainly was like later in the spring, and now I'm starting to see it pick up for the future classes. So these are some resources that I think can be helpful to all of us, when we're trying to stay up to date and informed. So Fair Test, many of you may already be familiar with it. It's a great resource that keeps a current list on schools that are test optional and test free. And Bob Schaefer, who's the executive director of Fair Test, does a really good job keeping that up to date. And there's a date on there as of, so you know when the last time it was that it was updated. There's also a page on that site that shows the chronological order of when schools went test optional. So students and families and and counselors can see if a school went test optional in 2005, the odds are pretty high that they're going to stick with that plan. Inside Higher Ed is something that you can subscribe to and get free daily updates on lots of topics related to higher education. Prep Matters is an organization back east, and I found them in the springtime because they started putting on monthly webinars, and they typically include 3 different colleges, and usually the colleges are different from each other, and they talk about what's happening on your campus, what is your response to COVID, how are you dealing with test optional, just lots of different topics. And they have a video library, and so you can go back and check that. Their webinars are appropriate for counselors, but you can also share them with students and parents as well. But I have found their work to be very, very good and helpful to me in my work. And then you may also be aware of the NACAC exchange. NACAC is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. And they have a listserv that they call the exchange, and you don't have to be a member to be able to access that exchange. I think probably I speak for Patrick and Jenna as well when I say I have a love-hate relationship with the exchange, because there's a lot of information that there, so, but you can set it to receive like a weekly digest, so you're not seeing messages as they come in, but there's a lot of really good relevant information that comes through on there. And it's a place where you can ask questions as well. And then the last resource on this side is the High School Counselor Week. And that's also available for free to counselors. And it's sort of like a clipping service. And the person that puts that site together every week sends out an update with links to articles on all sorts of different things. Some are counselor specific, but there are many times when I look at the High School Counselor Week that then I copy and paste and share an article that I've seen from there, you know, with like on my Facebook page or with parents and students. So those are great free resources for you as well. Also, I listed a few other resources on this page, and the College Navigator is brought to us by the US Department of Education. So the only bummer about this site is if there's ever a government shutdown, that website gets shut down as well. But I'm going to show you very quickly what that College Navigator looks like. Hopefully you can see this, but you can search for colleges, you know, using geographic areas and individual states. You can put in particular programs that you're thinking about. So like when I hit nursing, I go down here to registered nursing. Maybe I want to look at psychology. And what I always advise my students is don't click on the whole 27 flavors of psychology, but when you're an undergraduate, maybe just start with psychology general. And you can click only find schools that offer all of these selections. And then we're looking at bachelor's degrees, public, private, nonprofit, 4-year. You can click on more search options, and you can say how small of a school would you consider, to how large of a school would you consider. You can set those parameters. Housing, if students care about the setting of the campus, you can mark that. Percent of applicants admitted, I'm going to say like 50 to 90. So that's, you know, fairly broad and pretty inclusive. I don't put anything in with test scores. If a student must have a sports team, you can click that. And then when you hit show results, it generates a list of colleges. So it's a starting place for students. And when you click on specific schools, then I'll click on Pacific Lutheran University. You can see there's a whole bunch of different categories of information, including like when you click on admission, it tells us that PLU had an 86% retention rate or acceptance rate in the fall of 2019. So anyway, there's a lot. I don't have time to get into it very much with you, but there's a lot of really, really good information here. Another website that I like is College Express, and that's based on this book, The College Finder by Stephen Antonoff. And one of the things that's fun in here is he has lists and rankings. And so if I go over here to majors, and then I go here to all categories, and I click on biology, it's going to give me, you know, where did people who got their PhDs, where did they do their undergraduate work? And so that gives me a list of schools, and I can click on those schools and get more information there. So some really good resources there on College Navigator, and College Express. College Express, like I said here, students should set up an email address to use because they might get spam from that. And then the last site there is the Going Merry, which is a really great scholarship website that I hope you have your students check out. Jen, I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the resources on this page.
Yeah, one note I'll say about Going Merry, which is nice, is you can get reports as a school counselor as to what scholarship students have filled out. So that's kind of helpful. So I have a lot of students that I work with who are first gen college students. And so the I'm First website has been really helpful. You can order the book. It's about $37. And they update it every year. And they have curriculum, which is always nice as a school counselor to find good curriculum that you don't have to create yourself, but that you can borrow. And they have awesome videos and stories that you can use with students. So for example, my counseling team is primarily white women. So if we wanted to find representation, which is incredibly important, it's nice to go here and find, you know, if a Black male student who has had, shares his experience, or an Indigenous student. So finding that representation outside of my building and outside of our counseling office has been key in connecting with students and families. And this is a good place to do that. And also Big Future offers this too. And that's a College Board website. And again, they have lots of resources, and they have them in multiple languages. So we can get those in English and Spanish on Big Future for handouts for programs and things like that.
Great. I also am doing show and tell. I'm First publishes a guide to college book on an annual basis. That's great to use with students. So that's available as well. The National Survey of Student Engagement pocket guide looks like this, and this is available for free to high school counselors. And it's just a little brochure that's full of questions that students can consider asking when they're researching colleges. So when you look at that link, you can see the questions that are in here, but you can order these, because a lot of times students are like, well, what do I ask? What am I supposed to know? You know, kind of thing. And so that's a great resource as well. And then the other link there is the JED Foundation. And that is all about resources related to mental health for our students. So hopefully these might be some new resources for you. And we really look forward, when we get to the live Q&A, to hear from you about other resources that you use that you find helpful with your students in their college process as well. So Patrick, I'm wondering, as the president of PNACAC, if you could tell us a little bit about the organization.
Certainly. So PNACAC is the Pacific Northwest Association for College Admission Counseling, quite the mouthful. And we are the regional affiliate with Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and Montana of the National Association for College Admission Counseling. We have members both, like myself, on the secondary or the post-secondary colleges, universities, 2-year, 4-year nonprofit here in the region, and also those institutions who recruit in this region. And then also folks on the secondary school side, like Jen and Claire, both in public high schools, independent educational consultants, private high schools as well. So, this year is the first year where we've actually made membership for public school counselors free. So if you're a public school counselor out there, you can join PNACAC for free. All you have to do is click onto the website, join in. We'll ask you to renew each year. The current membership goes through the end of June, and then you'll get notification, but it's certainly not too late to take advantage of our offerings this year through the rest of the school year. We do monthly webinars, diversity table talks that we're bringing on board. Those are free. We do a typical in-person virtual or annual college tour that moves around the region. We were actually planning on going to Alaska this past summer. Then this summer, and we'll hopefully be there next summer in 2022, but we're actually working as well with our professional development committee to feature a virtual college tour for our members this summer. So hopefully we'll get that launched and really try to focus those sessions for school counselors. We know that sometimes school counselors have different conversations they want to have with admission folks than with a high school student present. So providing that opportunity. We do a scholarship each year, and the deadline's coming up here on March 1st. We do an annual conference, again, typically in person. This year it'll be virtual with a minimal fee to participate in that. We know that travel can be difficult to get away from your buildings, so perhaps this is a good opportunity in the virtual world. We do legislative advocacy on each state and at the federal level as well. We had conversations with your state representatives last summer when budget cuts were going to hit the UA system hard, and really trying to advocate for the needs not only of you and your students, but of your state, and how that's different than our states, than my state. And then certainly leadership development through participation on our committees. We have a dozen or more committees. And so if you have a particular passion related to college admission counseling, being able to participate on that and perhaps even serve on our executive board to really help bring that perspective from all 5 states. What's happening out in East Montana all the way to the tip of the Aleutian Islands is very different than what happens on the I-5 corridor from Bellingham to Medford. So we really try to bring in those diverse perspectives so that me here just outside of a metro area in Portland can understand better what we're offering and why it needs to be different by state and region. So we hope you'll join and we hope you'll participate in some of our future programs as well.
Great, thanks, Patrick. And just to be clear, when you go to the PNACAC website, there is a place there where you can volunteer. It's a call for service for the committee work. And we're currently, we opened at the end of January, we opened up applications for our board, and that board application is open until February 22nd. So I'd really, or sorry, the 24th. So if you are interested in being a part of the PNACAC board, just to repeat what Patrick said, we would really love to have Alaska perspective on our board, and we have a variety of openings this year. So there's a link to the website for membership, and then a little bit more information about the annual conference, and Jen is chairing that. And you can see the cost this year is really low. It's $20 for members, but if $20 is difficult, just let us know, and there are scholarships available. We don't want costs to prohibit anyone's attendance at the conference this year. And finally, to wrap it up, we are really grateful to have had the opportunity to have spent a little over a half an hour with you, sharing ideas. We definitely want to hear from you. We're looking forward to the live Q&A that's going to happen right now. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, feel free to reach out to us using the email there on the screen. We wish you a successful conference, and thank you so much for all the work you do with students in the great state of Alaska. Take care. Bye.